Alright, welcome to today's lesson on controlling. So controlling is the process of measuring your work performance and comparing those measurements to the objectives that you set out during the planning stage, and then taking any corrective action that is needed to ensure that the results are meeting to those particular objectives. The controlling process essentially assures that the right things are happening in the right way at the right time. Effective control is essential to organizational learning, which in turn leads to sustained success for that organization. And there are three types of control processes we can have. There's feed-forward control, concurrent control, and feedback control. Feed-forward controls usually happen before work activity begins. They ensure that the objectives are clear, that proper directions are established for your workers, and that the right resources are available. An example of this would be McDonald's. McDonald's requires that suppliers of their buns must provide those buns to be exact to their particular specifications, so that all of the resources are up to the standards that they want before they start producing the burgers in their stores. Feed-forward control is proactive. It is an attempt to try and solve problems before they actually occur. Concurrent controls focus on what is happening during the work process. In this case, you have a manager who is trying to monitor the ongoing operations as they are occurring to make sure that they are being done according to what was planned. These solve problems while they are occurring as opposed to before they are occurring. And finally, we have feedback controls. These take place after the work has been completed. In this case, we're focusing on the quality of the end results, providing useful information for improving future operations. So in this case, sort of what's done is done. We can't fix any mistakes we've made in the past, but we can prevent them for the next time through. It's very retrospective in nature. They solve the problems after they occur. The control process itself consists of four particular steps. The first is to establish performance standards. Then we measure our actual performance. After we've done that, we compare those performance measurements against the standards that we set earlier. And finally, we take corrective action. This is a continuous process. So when corrective action is taken, effective managers will simply return back to step one, establish new standards, and repeat the cycle over and over again. So what are performance standards? Standards are created when objectives are set during the planning process. It is important that these standards be precise. They are explicit statements of expected results from either a product or a service, a machine, an individual, or an organizational unit. Tolerance is a word we use to set a permissible amount of deviation from the standard. So let's say I'm going to try and produce 200,000 units, but I might be okay if I have 20 units less or more. Right? That's a tolerable level of deviation from my standard that I want to have. Some standards may have a wide tolerance, meaning you can have a big amount of deviation, and others may have a very strict tolerance. We have to get exactly that amount. You can have both output and input standards. Output standards are much more common. They measure the performance of results in terms of quantity, quality, cost, or time. You can have input standards, which are often used when outputs are either difficult or expensive to measure. These are things that we're looking at time of work expended and task performance. Example, are we able to follow the rules? What is the efficiency level? What is our attendance level? And so on. Just because our input standards are high does not necessarily guarantee that we have high quality output standards. So then we move to measuring the performance. Supervisors will collect data to measure actual performance and determine how much we deviate from the standards we set in the previous step. Our methods of data collection can be a variety. We can have things like time cards measuring how much time we're actually working, have sales numbers, production tallies, how much stuff we're actually producing. We can have verbal or oral observations and write reports about it. We can do inspections, right? Once we have those observations, we can then compare the performance to the standards that we set. And there are many methods that a manager may use to do this. We can try and compare based on calculated results of what we think we should get. We can compare to past results we've gotten previously, and we can compare to other departments or other organizations to see if we're keeping up with them. Comparing results to standards determines variation. It determines how much we are off by the standards that we set for ourselves. And again, we can expect some variation in all activities that we do, and we're looking at the tolerance levels as to how much that variance is acceptable. The amount that we're off by, is that an okay amount, or do we need to do something about it? The need for actual doing something about it reflects the difference between the desired performance and the actual performance. How much was tolerable? So then it leads us to taking corrective action. This is required when the difference between the actual performance and the desired performance exceeds our tolerance level that we set out during our planning portion. The supervisor must find the cause of the deviation. Why did we all of a sudden produce much less? Why all of a sudden is our attendance much lower? Why all of a sudden have we lost sales, right? Then we need to take action to remove or minimize that cause. We can have internal corrective action, which is we're doing some sort of self-discipline, or we can have external corrective action, where we're trying to do some sort of formal system in place that our employees must follow. We can have external controls, which is discipline, right? Discipline is the act of influencing behavior through reprimand. We're going to try and change the behavior of our employees by giving them some sort of disciplinary reprimand or consequence, right? Discipline that is applied fairly, consistently, and systematically provides a very useful control and can help to monitor the way that our employees work in the future. Progressive discipline is a modern disciplinary concept that ties reprimands to severity and frequency. We start off with some very simple discipline, and as you have a repeated offense, that discipline gets more and more intense and more extreme, if you will. Okay? It seeks to achieve compliance of our employees with the least extreme reprimand possible. So the least amount of discipline possible, right? To be effective, a reprimand should, number one, be immediate, happen right away, so we know that there's a cause for or a result for any particular thing that happens. It should be directed towards someone's action, not their personality. People shouldn't be sort of feeling bad about themselves. It should be, oh yeah, I did that wrong, I'm going to correct it now. It should be consistent and informative so that the person knows what they did wrong and how they should do it correctly the next time. It should occur in a supportive setting so we're not feeling like we're attacking our employees. And it should support realistic rules. Now there's three different approaches that we have to controlling in general. There's the balanced scorecard, management by objectives, and SMART goals. Balanced scorecard is based on the idea that when you measure something, that something happens. Okay? For example, if I record the number of customers that you've served over a period of time, you're going to serve more customers. If I'm going to take your attendance and I'm going to mark you on your attendance in my class, then you're more likely to come more consistently to class. Companies are going to take measurements in four key areas. Number one, finances, cash flow, sales growth, market share. Number two is customer satisfaction, right? How timely are we in our delivery of our products? Are we getting repeat business, right? Internal processes. What is our engineering efficiency? How fast are we producing our products? What is the cycle time? How long it takes us to get through an individual cycle of developing a product and selling it, right? That which also leads to the innovation and learning. How long does it take us to develop new products? And then our fifth of our four measurements is sustainability, right? How much waste are we producing? How much energy are we using up to do all of our stuff? The more we can conserve here, the better off we're going to be in the long term. We can also do management by objectives. This is where we have a supervisor and the employees sit down together to jointly set their objectives instead of the supervisors just setting them on their own. Okay? This is a highly debated concept as to whether or not it is effective or not. Okay? Essentially what you're going to do is you're going to have an agreement between the boss and employee regarding their performance objectives, how they're going to accomplish them, and how we're going to be measured, and then how we're going to go about reviewing those results. So we're empowering our employee as part of how we're going to assess them. A lot of detractors of this theory sort of think that it's not so good because it results in people only working to the level that they've set for themselves. They don't move beyond that. They don't push themselves to go any further. Okay? The goal of this idea is to have an increased motivation because the employees are feeling empowered and better communication with our employees. The last thing we need to look at is SMART goals. These are how we create our performance objectives, making sure that they are SMART. They are specific, so we target a very key result. We have a very specific thing that we're trying to look at. They're measurable, so I can tell whether I've done it or not. They are attainable, so it's realistic but still challenging. They are referred to regularly. In other words, we're constantly going back and looking at them and making sure we keep them in mind when we're doing things. And they are time defined. We know when we have to have that particular result achieved by so we can measure it. Okay? That's it. That's all we have time for today. We'll see you in class tomorrow where we can practice what we've learned.